Okay, so here we are in section 5.5, homework. Now this section is we're gonna use some software online. I'll explain. So here's the actual question. They're giving us this function, and they want us to find all zeros of the function. Now, what does that mean, all zeros? It means all places where the function hits zero. Now here's a graph of the function. And you can see that it hits zero right there at this point, right there at this point, and right here at this point. So that function has 3 zeros. There's the answers already for us. But I want you to know, when you do the homework on Canvas, it's not going to give you this graph. No graph given on the Canvas homework. It won't give you the graph, and it won't give you the answers, obviously. So where did I get the graph? I got the graph from Desmos. So here, let me show you. You get the graph at Desmos, DESMOS.com. So that's a free graphing program that's available online, no charge, super easy to use. You can use other online programs to graph, or a graphing calculator if you want. All these options are fine. I'm just telling you probably the easiest way is Desmos.com. Let me show you exactly, because again, they don't give you the graph on the homework, and we need that graph to help us solve this problem. Let me show you. So here's an actual snapshot. So here I am. This is Desmos.com. This is a screenshot from where I went to Desmos.com. And then I just typed right over here. There's the function we're looking at, the y. I think they had f of x. It doesn't matter. I just said y equals, same thing. Y equals 8x cubed minus 38x squared plus 5x minus 25. And then automatically Desmos graphed it. It just does it automatically as you type it in. Super easy to use. And I grabbed just a snapshot. I think I just went like that on my computer and just took a snapshot and put it next to the question. So what you're going to have to do as you're doing this homework, section 5.5, is for every problem you're going to have to go out to Desmos.com or any other graphing place or your graphing calculator and type in the function over on the left, y equals, you don't need to use f of x, you can just type y equals the function, and it will graph it for you automatically. And then we'll use that graph to help us find all the zeros, which is what we're doing in this section. This section is all about finding all the zeros. When you type it in, by the way, you have to, see I typed in 8x cubed, I did 8x, and to get the third power, you go up arrow, third power on your keyboard, minus 38x up arrow squared, plus 55x minus 25. So the powers are with the up arrows when you type it in to the upper left corner of Desmos, and then it graphs it for you automatically. Then you look at that graph, and what we're looking for is zeros. We're saying, where does the graph hit? So we're looking at this point, and this point. Let's go back now to the one I put on the snapshot next to the problem. So here it is. So here's question number 1. Again, I got it at Desmos.com. So at Desmos.com, we've got this graph of this function, and we're trying to find all the zeros. So here, let me erase all this. So I want those 3 places. So right there, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? Boom, look, it hits right at 1. See, that's one of our answers. And then it hits somewhere a little bit to the right of 1, and then somewhere between 2 and 3, it looks like about 2.5. So all we can tell for sure is this one is at x equals 1. That one's right on the button. So when you graph at Desmos.com, just take the 0 that's real obvious, the one that you can see super clear. That one right there, it hits at x equals 1, clear as day. The other one, I don't know. It's a little bit to the right of 1. This one, it might be 2.5. I don't know. It's somewhere between 2 and 3. Those are not as clear. But the one right here at 1, that hits right at 1. So we know that's the x equals 1. So start with that one. So number 1, first step, is you graph at Desmos.com, find a clear 0. Find a clear 0, x equals 1. So there's my first clear 0. Step 2. Now what are we going to do? How are we going to take it from here? Well, let me explain to you what we're doing. We're basically trying to take this function and break it all apart. Imagine with me, so we have this big old function right here, and we want to break it all apart. We know that this function, y equals, or f of x equals, is x minus 1 times something. Now, how do I know it's x minus 1? Well, remember, whenever you put a number next to x in the parentheses, it's always the opposite of what it equals on its own. So we found a clear, obvious 0 right on the graph, right there, x equals 1, so x equals 1. That means the opposite of that in the parentheses next to x. It's always opposite when you factor it in the parentheses next to x. So if that had been negative 1, then this would have been positive 1. It's always the opposite of the actual number x equals. So x equals positive 1 was the 0 on the graph, positive 1 right there. So minus 1, opposite, is what goes in the parentheses. Okay, so how do we find out what goes in this other parenthesis? We're going to do it by dividing. Let me show you. What if I had the number 30? Let me go for example. What if I had the number 30? And I said, hey, I'm going to give you a number that divides, divides in evenly is 2. So what if I told you it's 2? So then you'd go, okay, so this must equal 2 times something, right? 2 times something. 30. 30 must equal 2 times something, because if you found a number that divides in evenly, and that's what we've got, excuse me, with the x minus 1 here. We're doing the same thing with letters as you would with numbers down here. So if you looked and you said, okay, well, I've got 30, I know 2 goes in. How would you find 2 times what is 30? I mean, I know you know off the top of your head that it's 15, but what if it was, a harder number and you weren't sure? How could you find 15 is the other thing 2 multiplies by to give you 30? You would have to divide, wouldn't you? You would have to long divide. You would say 2 goes into 30, and you'd go 1 times 2 is 2, subtract 1, bring down the 0, 2 goes into 10, 5 times 2 times 5 is 10, goes in evenly, right, 0 remainder, you go, oh, 15, 2 times 15, right? That's how you would find, you would divide. And so that's what we have to do here. And then what would you do from there? After you had the 15, let me do it over here. You would say 30 equals 2 times what? And how you would find that thing is you would divide 2 into 30, and you would get the answer 15. And then you would bring that back. So that's exactly what we're going to do, but we're going to do it with x's instead of with numbers. But it's the same concept, right? Instead of a 30, we have this big old function here, 8x cubed minus 38x squared plus 55x minus 25. That's my y. That's my function value. So I'm going to break it down. I know it's x minus 1 times something. Well, what? Well, how you find what will multiply x minus 1 times what will go back to be the 8x cubed thing is you divide x minus 1 into the 8x cubed minus 38x squared plus 55x minus 25. All right, so we're going to do that with synthetic division. Remember synthetic division? We'll do that right here. Now, when you put the 1 out here, remember you just put the regular one, what it was right there. It's only opposite in the parentheses. Everywhere else it's normal. It's normal x equals positive 1 right here, normal x equals positive 1 right there. It's only opposite in the parentheses. Okay, and so then you put the coefficients. The 8 goes here, the minus 38 goes here, the 55 plus 55 goes there, and the minus 25 goes there. This is going to make that 55 a little bit better. Okay, and then remember how this works. You bring down the 8, and then you go multiply 1 times 8 is positive 8. Add them up, and that'll become minus 30, right? And now you take the 1 and you multiply. We're doing synthetic division. 1 times minus 30 is minus 30. Then you add those up. 55 minus 30 is 25. And then you multiply again. 1 times 25 is 25. Add them up. 0. Remember that last spot is the remainder. So we got a 0 remainder. Just like over here, we got a remainder of 0. Why? Because 2 goes evenly into 30. That's what it means when you get a 0 remainder. There's nothing remaining. It goes in perfectly, evenly. So that means that 1, or x minus 1, opposite in parentheses, divides evenly into 8x cubed minus 38x squared plus 55x minus 25, our function. And what does it leave left over? These guys. This is 8x squared minus 30x plus 25. Does that make sense there? That tells us what multiplies. Just like the answer of 15 we got comes over here. Right? We're breaking down the 30. Now we know it's 2 times 15 because 2 goes in evenly. 0 remainder, 15 times. 2 times 15 is 30. Same thing here with this big polynomial function, 8x cubed, etc., etc. It's x minus 1 times 8x squared minus 30x plus 25. Now, we have another step to go. Right here, same thing, right? You would need to, the 15 would break down to be 3 times 5. And then you would have the 30 all factored down. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do here now on step 3. Step 3 is use the quad for the 8x squared minus 30x plus 25. You're going to use the quad or factor. I'll say it either way. You can either do the quad or factor to break down that last part. Just like we broke down the 15, we factored it 3 times 5. We're going to break down this 8x squared minus 30x plus 25 that's right here by the quad or by factoring. So now let me go to a fresh screen here to do it. 8x squared minus 30x plus 25. All right. So this is number 1. 8x squared minus 30x plus 25, right? Wasn't that our number? Let me go back and double check. 8x squared minus 30x plus 25. I'm going to break it down. All right, so now I'm going to do the quad. Remember the quad, negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This is a. This is b here. This is c here. Okay. Now let's plug in the stuff. So negative b, what's b? Negative 30. Negative 30 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 30 squared minus 4 times A, which is 8 times C, which is 25 all over 2A. Okay, so we have that all broken down. Now let's use our calculator. So here we have two negatives, makes it positive. So bring it down here, positive 30 plus or minus square root of 30 squared, 900 on your calculator, minus 4 times 8 times 25. 4 times 25 is 100. 4 quarters is $1, right? On 100 times 8, 800. All over. Oh, 2A, I forgot to put in the A there, huh? The A should have been 8, huh? So this would be 16. All right. And so where does that go? So that's equal to 30 plus or minus the square root of 100 over 16. So that's 30 plus or minus 10 over 16, right? Because square root of 100 is just 10, no more root. Remember, after you do the square root of 100, it vanishes when it becomes a 10. And so what are the answers there? It's 30 plus 10 over 16, or 30 minus 10 over 16. So we break it into the two different cases, 30 plus 10 over 16 or 30 minus 10 over 16. And what's that? That's going to be 40 over 16, and then we reduce that, divide top and bottom by 8. So that'll be what? 5/4? No, 5/2. And then the other one is going to be 20 over 16, and then divide top and bottom by 4. It'll become 5/4. And that's the other answer. So those are our two answers from the quadratic formula. We broke down this 8x squared minus 30x plus 25, and it became these two answers, 5/2 and 5/4. There we go. Let's go back. So we get 5/2 and 5/4. So now we have all the answers, all the zeros are 5/2, 5/4, and the one from the beginning, the very first one we got right off the graph, 1. And those are the three answers they want from us in the homework. Any order, you can put those in any order, it doesn't matter. Just separate them by commas. So there they are. We found the 3 zeros. Those are the 3 places where the graph hits 0. We can see the x equals 1. What is 5/4? If you divide 5/4 in your calculator, it's 1.25, because it's 1 and a fourth. And 5/2 is 2.5 or 2.5. So 1.25 and 2.5. You can see this one right here. Let me get rid of that. This one right here is just a little more than 1. That's the 1.25. That's the 5/4. And then the other one here, that's the 2.5, the 2.5. So it's right, isn't it? These are the 3 places where this function, this 8x cubed, etc. function, hits the x-axis. Those are his 3 zeros. Those are the 3 places he is at a height of 0. So how did we get it again? Step 1, we graphed it at desmos.com to find a clear, obvious 0, x equals 1. That was obvious. The other ones were not as obvious because they were not right on a whole number. So we found the obvious clear when x equals 1, and then we wrote opposite in the parentheses, x minus 1, did long division, or synthetic division, and got the other remaining part, 8x squared minus 30x plus 25, kind of like starting with 30 and 2 goes in, and then you long divide and you get 15. Then we broke 8x squared minus 30x plus 25 down with the quad, and we got 5/2 and 5/4. So that gave us all 3 answers. Now the other thing you could have done, I said you could do the quad or you could factor. Factoring's quicker, but you have to be a really good factor. And I know it's not something most people are really comfortable with and real good at this point in your math career. If you keep going, you will be. You'll be super good at factoring. You'll be able to do it quicker than the quad. But so I'll show it just in case. You could factor. Here's the or. I'll say or factor 8x squared minus 30x plus 25. How would you factor? Well, that's where you just write the two parentheses and you go, what multiplies to be 8x squared? Well, you'd want to go with 4x and 2x. You might think, well, isn't it 8x times x? It could be. It just sort of depends. It's usually numbers closer together, like 4 and 2 are closer together than 8x and 1x. So I'm going to go with 4 and 2. And it's going to multiply to be 25 back here. The back numbers have to multiply to be the back. Be 5 times 5. Now, what signs do you need? Well, these two and these two are going to make the middle minus 30x. So you want minus on this guy and plus on that guy, because that'll make this minus 20 and this plus. Oh, no, I'm sorry, you want minus on both. Want minus on both. Then both minus 20 and minus 10 will make minus 30 in the middle. Now, that might be a little rusty to you, all those little details I did super quick. I know that's usually confusing for most people. You could check it to prove it's really right. If you were to multiply these, what would you get? 4x times 2x, 8x squared. 4x times minus 5, minus 20x. And now the minus 5 will go to both. That'd be minus 10x, right? Minus 5 times 2x. And then minus 5 times minus 5 plus 25. See how these two in the middle will combine to be minus 30x? See how it is indeed the factorization, the correct factorization of 8x squared minus 30x plus 25. So if you get that, then let me erase the check here. That just proved it's true. So now that well, I've got it factored, but how does that give me my two answers? Well, what that means is remember, these are zeros. We're finding zeros. So you would have to set each of these equal to 0. Because we're saying, where does this thing equal 0? What are the zeros? So then you would jump over the 5, and it would be 4x equals 5, positive 5, right? When the negative 5 jumps to the other side, it's positive 5. See, what we're setting it equal to 0, because we're trying to find zeros. And then you would divide by the 4, 5/4. See, there's our 5/4 answer. This one, jump the 5 over, and then it becomes a positive 5 when the negative 5 jumps to the other side. Then divide by 2. See, there's our 5/2 answer. So, and we already had the 1. So you can get them all by factoring, but most people will prefer the quadratic formula. So there we go. It's all coming from Desmos. Let's go to number 2 here. So again, we'd have to do step 1 up here. The graph would be at desmos.com, and you would find an easy or a clear, let's call it a clear 0. So what's a clear 0? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom, right there at 4. It's clearly hitting at 4, and we already have the answer, so we can see it's going to be 4. The other ones aren't as clear. This is somewhere, negative. This is somewhere positive.